Matthew chapter 24, verses 15 to 29. The abomination of the desolation. The number of the word that we will be featuring in this section is 2347, affliction. And we will continue with the verbs. As you see, the verbs are all in purple again, but we have a few that are underlined, and those are called participles. They're part of the verbal system. They're called verbal adjectives. An adjective has a case, nominative, genitive, dative, singular, first person, singular, plural. Normally a verb doesn't have all of that unless it's a participle. And we could make a separate section on just participles, but it's sort of like an adverb in the same classification. But the words that are all purple are pure verbs. And we can see here where I'll show you what these different verbs are as far as the parsing of it. Should is in the subjunctive. You should behold. And then we have noito, let. Whenever you see the let, then it's in the imperative. Should is in the subjunctive, so let, imperative, let, imperative. And then to, if it's generally to lift, to do something, it's the infinitive, to lift. And so then let him not turn would be the imperative, and the imperative is followed with an exclamation mark. So you know that there is an imperative in that verse. Are, to carry, is an infinitive. So these are just showing you all the verbs that are in this chapter. We'll get a little bit more into verbal conjugation, it's called. But it begins in verse 15, the abomination of the desolation. And we see in Mark 13:14 a very similar verse. It says, "And whenever you should behold the abomination of the desolation, the thing having been spoken by Daniel the prophet, standing where it must not, let the one reading comprehend," where it must not. But it's a little different here in Matthew. It says, "Whenever then you should behold the abomination of the desolation, the thing having been spoken through Daniel the prophet, standing in a holy place," and instead of where it must not. In Daniel, it says, "Whenever you should behold the abomination of the desolation, the thing having been spoken through Daniel the prophet, oten un idite to vedeligma tis erimosios, to rithen dia Daniel to profitu, estos in topo agio, o anagenoskon no ito." Daniel, we see in the three places. The first one here is Daniel 9:20, and it starts with a Gabriel. It says, "And yet during my speaking and praying and declaring openly my sins," this is Daniel in someplace in the Persian Empire or the Babylon, "and the sins of my people Israel, and tossing my desire for mercy before the Lord my God concerning the holy mountain of my God, Jerusalem, that yet during my speaking in the prayer, that behold, the man Gabriel appeared, which was an angel, I'm sure, whom I beheld in the vision at the beginning flying." Humans don't fly. "And he touched me about the hour of the evening sacrifice. And he brought understanding to me, and spoke with me, and said, O Daniel, now I came forth to instruct you for understanding. In the beginning of your supplication, the word went forth, and I came to announce to you, for you are a man desired. And now reflect in the matter, and perceive in the apparition. 70 periods of 7 were rendered concise upon your people and upon the holy city to finish off sin. Now, the 70 periods of 7 were the time that Israel was in Babylon, but it could be another time. And to set a seal upon sins, and to wipe out the lawless deeds, and to atone for iniquities, and to bring eternal righteousness, and to set seal upon vision and prophecy, and to anoint the Holy of Holies. Well, that's way more than what happened when Israel came back after Babylon with Ezra and Nehemiah, and by the time of Jesus, the temple was destroyed. So I see this whole scenario as sometime in the far future, at least the future to us today in 2024. And Gabriel continues and says, "And you shall know and perceive from the delivery of the word to respond and to rebuild Jerusalem until the Anointed One leading 7 periods of 7 and 62 periods of 7. And again, the square in the wall shall be built in the straits of times." Now, there's a man, Sir Robert Anderson, back at the time of in the 1800s, who wrote a book on the coming prince, and comes up with this period of time was from the time to rebuild to the time of Jesus. You can go read his book, but it continues again, "The square in the wall shall be built in straits of the times. And after the 62 periods of 7, the anointing shall be utterly destroyed, and judgment is not in him. And the city and the holy place he shall corrupt with the one taking the lead, the one coming, and they shall be cut off as in a flood." Now, who it's talking about, if it's talking about the man of sin or the beast and the false prophet, Jesus, takes a lot of study. "And he shall order extinctions until the end of war. And he shall strengthen covenant with many for 1 period of 7s, and in the half of the period of 7 shall be lifted away sacrifice and libation offering, and upon the temple an abomination of desolations." So this has not happened. It will be, and until the completion of time. Completion shall be given unto the desolation. So it hasn't happened yet. So basically, this abomination of desolations, we'll go into these 2 words here in a little bit, but first we're going to look in Daniel. So that's the first place it's mentioned. Then in Daniel 11, it says, "And he shall act and shall return, and shall perceive with the ones forsaking holy covenant." And this is a king of the south, I believe. "And arms from out of him shall rise up, and shall profane the sanctuary of the might. And they shall change over the perpetual sacrifice," which seems to be a common occurrence with all of these places. "And they shall offer an obliterating abomination." It's not a desolation, but obliterating. So pretty much the same, obliterating, desolate. "And the ones acting lawlessly shall bring upon a covenant by a slip, and a people knowing his God shall grow strong." The God could be the man of sin entering into the temple in 2 Thessalonians. "And they shall act, and the discerning of the people shall perceive in many things, and shall be weak by the broadsword, and by flame, and by captivity, and by ravaging of days," which would be at the time of the tribulation, where it says in Revelation that so many Christians are killed. When they were in heaven, they were all wearing white robes. And it says, "And in the weakening of them they shall be helped with a little help, and many shall be added unto them by a slip." Now what it means, I'm not quite sure. "And from or of the ones perceiving they shall weaken, to purify them by fire, and to choose, and to be uncovered until the time of the end." So this is sometime in our future, for it is still a time. "And he shall do according to his will, the king, and the king shall be exalted and magnified over every god and over the God of gods, and shall speak pompous words, and shall prosper until of which the wrath should be completed. For unto completion it is coming to pass." So the man of sin, the false prophets, the tribulation, it's all going to be horrible for the Christians, or people that I believe we will be taken in the assemblage that is mentioned in 2 Thessalonians 2. And then the man of sin appears. He goes in and proclaims himself as God. The tribulation happens. All the people that are left on the earth some of them will understand the things of God, Jesus, and hopefully maybe something like the Apostolic Bible here, finding a video somewhere, understanding. And it says, and upon all gods of his fathers he will not take notice, nor the desire of women. And concerning every god he will not take notice, for above all he will be magnified. And he will glorify a God of fortress at his place, and a God whom his fathers knew not, he shall glorify with gold and silver, precious stones, and with desirable things. And he shall act in the fortresses of refuge with a strange God, of whichever he should recognize. And he shall multiply glory, and shall submit to them many. And the land he shall divide by gifts. And in end time he will mix horns with the king of the south, and the king of the north shall be gathered together unto him with chariots. It goes on and on. Here you can read all about it. But then in chapter 12 it continues, and from the time of the alteration of the perpetual sacrifice, again that's that alteration, and of the putting the desolation, the abomination of desolation, 1,290 days. Now this doesn't come out to 302.5 years. It's a little bit different. I'll show you what they are in a second. And it says, blessed is the one enduring and coming unto 1,335 days. So I believe this is way in the future. You'll know at that time. And you, Daniel, go for fulfilling completion, and you shall rest and shall rise up at your lot at the completion of days. So this is all going to come to pass. People at that time will understand it way better than we do. So now the years that was mentioned in chapter 12, there's two different types of calendar: the Gregorian calendar, 365 days, and the lunar year, 354. And the lunar is what Israel took into. So in the Gregorian, in chapter 11, it was 3.53 years, and in the lunar Israeli calendar, 3.64 years. And then in chapter 12, the one who remains to 3.66 years in the Gregorian, or 3.77 in the lunar Hebrew calendar will be delivered, the things it says. So that is the years there. Now, let's go to the abomination, the first word of the two, abomination of desolation. Now, abominations, plural, appears in many places as actions. There's the abominations of the unclean in Leviticus 5:2, the abomination of homosexuality in Leviticus 18:22, 20:13, Deuteronomy 22:5, abomination of making idols or idolatry in Deuteronomy 7:25 and 27:15, the abomination of blemished animals for sacrifice, Deuteronomy 17:1. It goes on and on. The hire of a harlot, or price of a dog in Deuteronomy 23:18. Deceitful yoke balance scales, Proverbs 11:1. Perverting ways, Proverbs 11:20. Lying lips, Proverbs 12:22, and sacrifices of impious ones, Proverbs 15:8. These are all actions. Now, actual things that are abominations, it says in Genesis 46:34, for every shepherd of flocks is an abomination to the Egyptians. And then in Exodus 8:26, it says, for the abominations of the Egyptians we sacrifice to the Lord, that is, the animals of the flocks. And then in Deuteronomy 12:31, it says, for the abominations which the Lord detested, they did with their gods. For also their sons and their daughters they incinerated in fire to their gods. And the gods are abominations. Ashtoreth, abomination of the Sidonians, is mentioned in 1 Kings 11:5. Chemosh of Moab and Molech of Ammon in 2 Kings 23:13. They're the abominations to God. In 2 Chronicles 34:33, it says, and Josiah, king of Israel, removed all the abominations from out of all the land which was of the sons of Israel. So this idols are over and over when you see the abominations. It's either an action or it's actually something that is God hates it. And so whatever they put up here, we'll see what it could possibly be a little later here. But in Jeremiah 7:30, it says, they arrange their abominations in the house of which my name is called upon it to defile it. So the idols were set up in the temple in Jerusalem by the Jews. In Jeremiah 16:18, it says, by the decaying flesh of their abominations, the flesh. Ezekiel 8:10, and behold, every likeness of a crawling thing and a beast, vain abominations, and all the idols of the house of Israel being diagrammed upon the wall round about holy. So all these ideas of the abominations of the idols. In Malachi 2:1, it says, Judah abandoned, and an abomination took place in Israel and in Jerusalem, for Judah profaned the holy things of the Lord in which he loved, and applied unto alien gods. So here's the abomination. It's something of an idol, I believe, that is an abomination. Whatever they set up is replacing God, more or less. Now, the desolation. 2050 appears 17 times in the Old Testament, only 3 in the New. In Leviticus 26:34, it says, then the land will favor its Sabbaths all the days of its desolation. Israel and the people were taken to Babylon later when they didn't fulfill the Sabbaths. And this is what Leviticus is saying is going to happen. And it does happen. 2 Chronicles 36:7, it says, desolation happens from the attack of the king of Assyria. And 2 Chronicles 36:21, to fulfill the word of the Lord through the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land favorably receives its Sabbaths, by observing the Sabbath all the days of its desolation, to observe the Sabbath in the fulfillment of 70 years. And so this is the desolation, that they are going to be gone. People will be gone. We'll see where Jesus says they're going to be gone later here in Matthew. You can look at Psalm 73, has more about the desolation. The earth for desolation in Hebrews 4:7. The land for desolation, Deuteronomy 7:34, and the house of God for desolation, Jeremiah 22:5. But then in Jeremiah 25:18, it says, Jerusalem and the cities of Judah and the king of Judah and his rulers, to appoint them for desolation and for an untrodden land and for a hissing and for a curse as this day. And they were sent into Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar for the 70 years, till the return of Ezra and Nehemiah. And then at that time, Daniel says in 8:13, for how long shall the vision stand? The taking away the sacrifice, the desolation, and the granting the sin of desolation. And the holy place and the force shall be trampled upon, the destruction of Israel. And this is what I see it possibly could be. It says in Daniel 9:2, for a fulfillment of the desolation of Jerusalem, 70 years. So this abomination of desolation, it's an abomination. It's something like I see as an idol from the Old Testament descriptions. The desolation is the people are all gone and wiped out. In the future, this will happen. And it says, then this thing will be standing in a holy place. Could be something like an atomic or some type of a super weapon that annihilates Jerusalem and all the land around it, irradiates it, because we know by the last 10 chapters of the book of Ezekiel that the temple will be on Mount Meron, up west of the Sea of Galilee, because it says the water flows from the temple eastwards into the lake. Couldn't be Jerusalem. So the people are all gone out of the southern part. It mentions that in other places in the Old Testament prophets, being desolate, the land being desolate. Now, what does Jesus say about all of this? He says, Tote en teudeia phevgetosen epi taori. Then the ones in Judea, let them flee into the mountains. So it's going to be wiped out, so get out. O epi tu thomatos, mi kataveneto, are ti ektis ikias avtu, and the one upon the roof, let him not go down to lift anything from out of his house. In verse 18, ke on to agro, mi epistrepsato, opiso, are ta imatia avtu, and the one in the field, let him not turn back to carry his garments. Now, I believe this is a future time, not for us Christians. We'll be long gone, probably. In verse 19, uethe, but woe, tes and gastri accuses, ones having ones in the womb, pregnant women, ke tes thilazuses, and akines tes imeres, and the ones nursing in those days. The horrible things are going to happen. But he says, prosevkaste they, inami, genite, ipsi figi, himonos, but pray that your flight into exile should not take place in winter, where it's going to be uncomfortable to flee. Bad weather. Me they in salvato, nor breaking the law by having to flee. In 21, it continues, estegar tote thlipsis megali, for there will then be a great affliction. Now, the affliction is a word we're going to follow here, but it's affliction. It says, iau gegonen ap arkis kosmu eos tunin, such has not taken place from the beginning of the world until the present, nor in any way should be. Ud umi genite should be. In the future here, it says about affliction in the New Testament in Revelation 1:9 that John was on the island of Patmos because of the affliction, great affliction. And then in Revelations 2:9 and 10, it talks a great affliction of the ones in Smyrna for 10 days. And then the ones in Thyatira in Revelations 2:22 have great affliction. But in Revelation 17, it talks about, it says, these are the ones coming from out of the great affliction, ones wearing white robes. There it is, the great affliction, thlipsis, ones wearing the white robes who are losing their lives. And then in Daniel 12:1, it says, and in that time shall rise up Michael, the great ruler, the one standing for the sons of your people, and it will be a time of affliction such as not taken place from of which time there became a nation on the earth. Until that time, it hasn't happened yet. And in that time your people shall be delivered, every one being found written in the book. So there will be some people that are delivered and go through, and then maybe the 1,000 years at the same time, the 1,000 years in heaven and on earth, the last 10 chapters of Ezekiel, where the temple is built on Mount Meron, and then the abyss is open, the beast comes by. A lot of things in the future are going to happen. And then in verse 22, ke imi exolo vuthisan e imere akine, and unless those days were cut short, uk an esothi pasasarks, not was any flesh delivered. But they are. It says, dia they tus eclectus kolovothisonte e imere ekine. But on account of the chosen ones, those days will be cut short. So the people are living in the Great Tribulation that find out about Jesus. Many of them are going to lose their life, wear the white robes in heaven, but the other ones will make it at the end. A few of them will get through. And then the days are going to be cut short to let those people live. In verse 23, tote eantis imin ipe, if any should say to you, idhu, O thee, O Christos, here is the Christ, o thee me, pistevsite, you should not believe him. And verse 24, egarthesonte gar psevdo Christos, ke psevdo prophete, for false Christs and false prophets will arise, even in that time, apparently. Ke thosusin simia megali, and they will give great signs, ke terata, so as oste planise, e dinaton, K tus eklektu, so as to mislead, if possible, even the chosen ones. So we have these powerful time of this prophets and the false prophets, the Antichrist, the beast, all the doing things, causing fire to come down from the sky, it says in other places, doing things that most people will all follow them as they did somebody like Hitler in the Nazi Germany, this man that had this charisma and the power. And that at that time, they'll be like Hitler on steroids. And then in 25, it continues, Idho, pro Erika emin, behold, I describe to you beforehand. And ean un iposin emin, and then they should say to you, Idhu, anti erimo esti, he's in the wilderness, me exalthite, you should not go forth. Idhu, or behold, entis tamis, is in an inner chamber, in a place. Me pistevsite, you should not believe it. So the people in the future that may be reading this Apostolic Bible, thousands of years or who knows how far out, and they find it, then right here, don't believe these people. And then he continues in 27, Ospergar e astrapi exarchite apo anatolon, for as the lightning comes forth from east, ke phaenete eos thesmon shines forth unto the west, utos este ke e parousia to iu to anthropu, so will also be the arrival of the Son of Man. So he's talking all about the arrival. It's going to be way far out. The arrival we went through in the last section, so you can go through more on the word parousia. And then in 28 continues, Opu gar ean e topatoma, for wherever might be the corpse, a dead body, a carcass is also another word. Aki sinak thesonte e eati, there the eagles will be gathered together. Many dead bodies at in this place when it all happens, when Jesus returns. It's going to be terrible. And then in 29, Eptheos they metatin thalepsin ton imeron ekinon o ilios scotis thesate. And immediately after the affliction of those days, the sun will be darkened. Ke salini u thosi tophengos avtis, and the moon will not give her brightness. Ke asteris pesunte apo tu uranu, and the stars will fall from the heaven. Ke dinamis ton uranon salev thesonte, and the forces of the heaven shall be darkened. And we see this happening. It says in Isaiah in the Old Testament, in verse 13:10, for the stars of the heaven and Orion and all the cosmos of the heaven shall not give of their light, and the rising of the sun shall be made dark, and the moon shall not give her light, and that is the day of the Lord. And then it talks about 1/3 of the light being covered could be because of the tribulation and being hit by another asteroid and so forth. You can't see the sun, and that's in Revelation 8:13. Also, that condition is at when the well of the abyss is open in Revelation 9:2. So at the end, it's going to be where the sun darken the moon. Well, that hasn't happened, so we know it's still in the future. But we're not done yet with Jesus is speaking about this end time, because the next section is the coming of the Son of Man.